I remember on the floor, because everyone would be stamping their feet, you know, as the anxiety rose, the tension, and it would be, and then the buzzer, the number comes out, the floor just erupts.
We were short-staffed, and my head trader went, right, you take that phone. He shoved the phone in my hand, and he ran off down the other end and started trading. And then he was signaling stuff back to me, and I've got a client on the end of the phone going, what have I done? What have I done? And I was like, I was looking at my guy, and I was listening, talking to the guy. I was like going, I have absolutely no idea.
Welcome back to the Trading Battles weekly interview series where trading legends, market disruptors and industry game changers share their raw insights. Today's guest is an absolute beast in the world of financial news, Harry Daniels, former broker, trader and founder of LiveSquawk, a real-time news service trusted by pros across the globe. With over 3 decades in the markets, Harry's been on the front lines of some of history's most chaotic, unpredictable market events. So whether you're grinding charts, running algos, or trading off your gut, this one's for you. Let's get into it. Harry, welcome, mate.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. Nice to see you again. Interested to talk about LiveSquawk because you have a completely different sort of perspective of the markets than I do. I'm a technical trader and I'm not that focused on fundamentals, so you can probably teach me a thing or two. But let's start by going back to how you got started in the industry.
Yeah, sure. Well, it was a long time ago now, so I don't know if I can remember it all. Back in 88, I left school with some O-levels and GCSEs, as there were, because I was transitioning over from one to the other, and decided I wanted to work. It wasn't necessarily in the city, but the only kind of jobs I got through the YTS, which was an old scheme to get people, kids into the work environment, was at a bank, Barclays Bank. Oh, no, it was Nationwide, or NatWest rather. We're looking for computer analysts, and the other job was at a company called Helleber, a German bank. We used to call them merchant banks then, called Helleber. So I went for interviews at both, got the one at the bank as opposed to the computer programmer. And that was it. I started in settlements, which was the back office roles, checking trade confirmations, broker tickets and all that sort of stuff. And then just you work your way from the back office. It's the old school apprenticeship, from the back office to the middle office to the front office. And then I got an opportunity to work on the live floor, futures exchange. So that was in late 88, 89. And I never looked back after that, really.
So what did you do when you got to the live floor? You were clerking at first, I suppose.
Yeah, I was a clerk. I do remember when you get there, if you remember this, back in the day, you used to go around the corner. So it was on the Royal Exchange, but there was another building, administrative building they had around the corner next to a pub. And you should go there and get your all your stuff, like your badge, your jacket, and they gave you this little handbook. And this little handbook was this dour-looking woman, and she was teaching you hand signals, all the basics, like buy, sell.
I remember.
All that sort of stuff, right? So I took that away, and I was naive as anything. I've literally just turned 18, and so still naive. And I remember taking all the stuff, really excited, got down to the floor, and it was just like, you're going to be, admin and a runner, picking up cards and stuff like this. And I saw the booklet. I got home that night. I was really excited, showed my mum and dad, and then I was like, I won't need that then, will I? Just threw the book away and just didn't think anything of it. Got on my job, and I think it was about 3 or 4 months down the line, we were short-staffed, and my head trader went, right, you take that phone. He shoved the phone in my hand, and he ran off down the other end to what was the Euromart pit at the time and started trading. And then he was signaling stuff back to me, and I've got a client on the end of the phone going, what have I done? What have I done? And I was like, I was looking at my guy, and I was listening, talking to the guy. I was like going, I have absolutely no idea. Anyway,
You couldn't read the hand signals.
I didn't read the book, so I had no idea what he was saying, not a clue. And I remember he came back, he goes, did you fill him? And I was like, fill him what? And he just, my boss went mad, and I got sent back upstairs to the back office there. But by that time, I'd realised that I was so in love with the floor and the magic and everything. And it was just different. It wasn't an office. It was just different. It was just open space, loads of noise, adrenaline-filled sort of room. and I wanted to be there. So I was a hard worker. I did my job up in the back office, so let me stick around. And then I went and got a job, and I went to work for a company called Cargill Investor Services.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, we're old boys who were on the live floor for a very long time, so that people who are watching won't understand what we're talking about with hand signals and executing orders.
Oh, okay.
So, just to explain, there was Harry was on the phones in the booths, which were stationed around the hexagonal pits, which is where the traders were, the brokers and the market makers. I was actually a market maker, so Harry would be on the phones, and he would be signaling to his guy in the pit to try and find out what was going on. So you do the hand signal, you do size or something like that, wouldn't you?
Yeah. What's going on there? And if I'm trading the Bund or the Euromark as it was, size, what's there? Who's buying?
I'd be saying it's like 52 bid at 4, something like that, and I'd be going 2424. That's the bid, that's the offer. And Harry would talk to his customer on the phone.
Yeah, so I'll be on the phone just telling them what it is. They're asking, well, what's the size on the bid? Oh, well, it's 2 bid on like 500 lots, 2 bid on 500. And he'd come in and say, oh, show me 200 at 5. So then I'd then signal to you in the boot in the pit, 200 at 5. You sell is that way. So you're selling your hands away from you, and you're selling an amount at a price. Whereas opposed to if you're buying, you're paying the price for the amount. And so, and amounts could be on your head or on your arm, depending on the size. So that was typically what we would do. And so you'd say, well, yeah, you filled or you filled.
Well, I'd say you've sold 200 at 5 or whatever. Or if you had you had 252 lots at 5. And the reason we had to do that is because it was so noisy, everyone shouting and screaming on the floor. You couldn't have a conversation. So you had to communicate through hand signals. Even within the pit, when you were standing close to people, you often just traded with hand signals because you couldn't say, excuse me, how many, by how many? So you would confirm with your hand. Anyway, just wanted to explain that to everybody, what we were talking about.
Definitely. And then that once you got over, that was a different language. So and then on top of that, you had the description of the different trading companies. You had the Goldman Sachs, or you had the Tullets, the TNT button, the dynamite button, or you had G&I at the time, which was drinking. So there's a number of different a number of different signals for whoever it was that was trading, and you could see what was going on. And it was all that. I guess it was all that. It was very visceral. It was very, in your face, and that was the part I loved. I wasn't particularly studious. I don't think I was thick, but I just think sometimes you find your vibe, and the floor was definitely that for me. I ultimately excelled, I think, in what I did as a broker. And so went to Cargill. I was a runner for like 6-7 months. You're doing the admin, basically. You're getting the cards from the trader, you're matching the ticket from the broker on the booth in the phone, and making sure that goes together. You're matching the trades. If you're a seller, like we just sold 205, then there's got to be a buyer. There's a counterparty to that, and therefore the trader writes down the card on his cards. You sold 50 here, 25 there, 75 there, and whatever, another 25 there, and then that card will get matched with your trader's cards, and that will be a closed ticket. So there was all that to it, and then I got put on the phones, and we had a line because it was a very busy office. We had the floor presence, but we had traders upstairs. I used to stand at the end of the booth with a phone constantly on my ear, and my job was to quote the markets. I had the Bunds, I had the Euromarks, I had the Swissy down that end as well, and options in between. And it's my job to make sure, provide colour, as they call it. And our colour ultimately is making sure it's not just numbers that the traders upstairs or the guys in offices around the world were just looking at numbers on their boards. They knew what was behind that. We've got a big seller here. Barclays are coming into the market and doing this. They're buying 500 scale down between 2s down to 0s or whatever. And so it was that colour constantly, all day, every day. But then I'd have orders, and I'd have sometimes on busy days 3 or 4 people screaming down the phone at me, giving me orders in any of these markets. And so you had to have that aptitude to be able to separate out one order from the other, make sure you're talking to your traders over there or traders there, and there was an aptitude to it, and I guess I had the ability to do that.
So were you holding 3 or 4 phones at a time then?
No, at the time it was just the one line because we had all the brokers upstairs screamed down.
Yeah.
So it was one line with people talking over me. But yes, as you progress, as I became, as I moved up the chain, I guess, we have what you call a dealer board. And this dealer board had something like 36 lines on it, buttons that you could press, which were a telephone board, basically. Each one with a different client at the other end of the phone. And so you'd press on the button, pick up the phone, talk to the client, or the line would flash, press it, talk to the guy. And on busy occasions, yes, there were times when you've seen pictures. You have one phone there, one there. You're signaling orders to your guy in the pit. You're trying to write your tickets to make sure that it was corresponds with what the trades are and all this sort of stuff. Plus, you're working on different orders as well.
Yeah, you needed more than 2 hands.
Oh god, yeah, it was. But this was the adrenaline part. It wasn't always like that. There were down times or whatever, but then you could wander around and talk to your friends. And again, it was that freedom. I think the responsibility we were given at a very young age. Again, I was 17, 18 when I started, and by the time I was 22, 23, I was a fully blown broker on the phones and dealing with large amounts of money and orders. I guess. On a daily basis, and there was a definite buzz to it, and I loved it. The camaraderie, that ability to not come and go because you had to be there to man the phones, but there were 3 or 4 of us in the booth. We looked after each other, we looked after our traders, they looked after us, and it was very much a team effort, especially in Cargill where we were. Funny enough, I've organised a reunion this Friday, so we're all getting together this Friday.
Nice. Okay, so after the floor shut, you moved on with a new idea, really.
Well, before that, I mean, I left the city and I sort of went travelling for a bit, and then I came back. I got work, and I was working in IT services. I actually left the city completely, went into IT services, got a job on sales, doing sales, and it's relevant to what I'm coming on to, and customer service. And it wasn't, the buzz wasn't there, that adrenaline there. You miss that ability. 1:30 would come on a Friday, the first Friday of the month. And whereas every first Friday of the month, non-farm payroll is there and everyone, the deer everyone's waiting for in terms of an opportunity to trade, an opportunity to do business. One day it would come and I'm eating my lunch, and it's just not the same. There wasn't that buzz. I got an opportunity to go back and trade for a prop firm, which I did, Mako Global, back in the day. I did 3 years as a fixed income trader. And when that finished, I couldn't make any money, not consistently, that came to an end. And I was really just looking around, searching in my early 30s at what I wanted to do. I split up with my girlfriend, nowhere to live really, because we rented a place. I had no money. And a friend of mine said, oh, so-and-so's looking for someone to do the squawk. This guy was Batesy. And Batesy was a renowned person on the floor. I'm sure people have mentioned him on your podcast before. But he was looking for an assistant to help him call trades and squawk market info. So I went to see him and he went, oh, yeah, no worries, son. I'll put you in touch with the boss. I went to a company called GH Financials, and they took me on, and I became a squawker from there. And that was good. I did that for a couple of years. Then they shut down the office and the desk, and so I was redundant again. And I was just getting to the point where, look, I don't want to work for someone else anymore. I don't want to start my fate in someone else's hands. And I liked what I did. I thought I was good at what I did. It was similar to what I'd done at the very beginning of my career on the floor. And so I went about setting up my own company and my own squawk service. Now, you remember this is in the early noughties, so about 2002, 2003. Technology the technology was there. Most of the traders now were screen-based. The floor days had come to an end, really. And so it was a matter of like, right, well, how do I get this going? I've got no money, but I know I can get some business in. I know I can convince people that this is a service they need. So back in the day when you could still get 0% interest rate, interest on credit cards, I maxed out 3 cards. So I maxed out 10 grand on the first card to help pay for everything I needed and to pay my costs and for me getting to work and everything else. And then I got a second card to pay off that first 10 grand and then a third card. And so every month I was just juggling these 3 cards. I wouldn't advise it in a non-zero interest, 0% interest environment. But back then you could do it. And I built up the business basically and got more and more customers on board, paid off the credit cards and set up my first company, which was First Call Market Squawk, before we got to LiveSquawk ultimately, and just began really broadcasting to an audience of traders. And I sat amongst traders as well. I was in an office, fortunate to be in an office with traders around me. So calling out the numbers, they would shout and say, what's going on? This market's just moved. There's been a spike in there. And they were my eyes and ears as well. And so, and built the business up from
So you
there.
really got to understand exactly what information traders needed. Okay.
Absolutely.
And obviously,
it was one of those sort of things I always thought I knew as a broker. You know, I've got a fairly good idea of what the big guys, you know, we used to trade for some of the biggest funds in the world, some of the biggest traders out there who had thousands to move the markets. And so it was almost easier when you have that kind of size and that kind of power at your fingertips. I did forget, I actually did work in Chicago as well. So, you know, futures started in Chicago and I worked on the CME and CBOT in the mid-90s and got to see the old school traders really plow their trade apply their trade rather.
what did you learn from them?
Well, there's Tom Baldwin, who's in Market Wizards, possibly the biggest trader that there was at the time, trading 30-year government bonds, US 30-year treasuries. And what I learned was composure. I learned you do things at your pace. One of the things I learned ultimately from working on the floor and in those pressure environments is you can only go as fast as you can go. There's no point trying to do 100 things at once if you can't cope. Make sure you have that coping mechanism to slow everything down and to do everything in its, you know, and ultimately not to rush. And that would still be in good stead, I think, outside of work environment, but as much as don't panic, you know, just be systematic, get things done, don't panic, and it will come. And if you make a mistake, you'll have time to sort it out, you know. And so it's just really making sure you order stuff in your head and don't
Stay
lose
within your comfort
situation. Yes, stay within your comfort. Don't always try and retain control of the situation. And it applies for a lot of things in life, but I learnt it on the floor, I think, because there were occasions when things would get out of control. That we had situations like when we fell out the ERM, the UK fell out the ERM in 92. One of the best days I've ever experienced in a market, then and now, despite the global financial crisis, everything else. That day it was just insane.
I remember it.
Like to finish it. Well, you know, you were down the sterling end, I think, weren't you at the time? Or
I was trading short sterling options. I remember by Friday I was so exhausted. We'd done really well. I just didn't have the energy to stand in the pit. I came in for an hour or two and went home. I was that exhausted. And I mean, I was a young man. I was 24 years old or 23 years old. But it was great. I couldn't speak. We shouted so much all week.
Yeah,
I couldn't get the words out anyway. So even if I wanted to trade, I couldn't speak.
Well, you know, referring back to the dealer board, I remember because I've worked for big companies. I worked for Cargill, I worked for Tulloch's on the floor. 2 big brokers out there who had big client lists and did good size. And I remember I was at Cargill and the board, we had 2 boards. And when it started kicking off, the board shorted because every client was ringing at the same time.
Wow.
So you just saw it go, it went bright and then it went poof and all the lines went, it just shorted out all the bulbs. It was that kind of day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Immense. But again, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, so going back to the future effectively. So the CME, CBOT taught me a lot just about really other markets, other ways of doing things. You know, we all traded futures in London and in Chicago, But there were different, Hans said there were different styles, there were different ways of putting trade. It just broadened your horizons, both personally and professionally, and I love Chicago. It would be my second home, if I'm honest, even in the winter. And it was a great place to learn and experience. So that was good fun. But yeah, getting back to the here and now, we'll get them forwards. All the skills I'd learned, even in the IT services, doing sales, ringing people up, all lent into starting up my business, cold calling people, getting people to take trials of what I was doing, and convincing people that this was something they would need. Because it was hard at first. There was one or two other Squawk services out there, but we weren't well known as an industry, and people thought, well, I've got Bloomberg or Reuters, I don't need you lot.
What was the difference between that you offered or still offer to traders? Why is it not good enough for me just to have Reuters and Bloomberg?
Look, first of all, there's screen real estate. You've only got so many eyes, and you have so many things you're looking at if you're trading and your charts, looking at your charts and everything else, that sometimes that ability to take in the news and understand the fundamentals is hard. And, it's hard for anyone. So we offer the kind of service where we're an extra pair of eyes and ears. We know the scheduled events. We have a calendar that you can look at and understand what's going out when. But we're also there when you're busy trying to get in or out of a position, and we can alert you via our audio news service. And just quickly, the way it works is you log into into the platform. There's a little player. You press the button play, and you then have a box and a player. And anytime something comes out that's relevant to your market or your asset class, you'll hear us talk about it. We're not a radio station, so we're not constant. We'll only talk when there's something worth saying. And if there are like Trump comments of late, or the German election or debt break situation, we're there to scroll through social media and all the news services to try and bring you and aggregate down what it is you need to know for your trading day. And it's really just to try and be in another alert system there. We're not there to make you money. That's your job. We're there to try and help you not lose money. Is probably the best way to put it. We provide timely news.
I was going to say right now with Trump tweeting, and those a single tweet can move various different markets. It's pretty vital to know what's going on. And like you say, you can't possibly. And these days, people are trading from their phones as well, so you can't possibly be looking at news services while you're watching your MT5 platform or whatever it might be. And the social media thing, I didn't even think about that. Is way more than Reuters and Bloomberg now. There's so many different social media channels, so many different accounts that you've got to follow to stay up to date.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got a classic example today, and the markets have reacted or been preemptive to it for the past few days, I'd say, and that's Liberation Day. Make America Rich again, I think it is, or Wealthy again, as its other name. And that in itself is shifting narrative and really taking investors. Investors are now guarded ahead of this announcement, which for anyone who doesn't know is going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 o'clock. I think it's 10 o'clock Central European Time tonight. So, and it's really going to lay out Trump's vision for tariffs and really try and again, what he sees is get some redress for what he terms unfair taxation on trade. Also, the aim is to try and make Americans buy American products and that are produced and manufactured in America. So and that's going to have ramifications globally, as America is the biggest economy in the world, and has a lot of influence in the world. So the ramifications for that are going to be, and reverberations will carry on for days, I think, potentially, or as we've seen from past events, just fade out until the next time he speaks.
If I'm trading, S&P 500 or something, I'm going to need you on in the background, because each announcement about tariffs or whatever could do all sorts to the indices, to the dollar. And I can't possibly sit there looking at Twitter and watching, the euro US dollar and the S&P and whatever moving around. So if I've got that coming into my ear, I've got vital information.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's a warning. It's, it's the canary in the coal mine sort of thing. Listen, as I said, we're not there to make guys money, but if you have a position, you could be the best technical trader out there in the world. Sometimes there are just events that run everyone over, but it's being best equipped to deal with that and understand that. You may not do anything as a technical trader to change what you're doing, but you have a better awareness of what it is that's moving the markets around. Is it a technical move, or is there something more to it? And I just think that's where we're best equipped to help day traders and investors, but day traders particularly, understand what's happening, why it's happening, where it's coming from, and just so they're not surprised. That's the idea. I mean, we don't know things coming out before they happen on in some instances, but where we do know, where things are scheduled, a quick reminder here, we'll say, look, there's a 10 minutes from now, you're going to get some US data on the wires. This is what's expected. This is what it was last time. There was a 3-minute warning. There you go. We're coming up to it now. Just be aware, top of the hour, this is happening. And then when the data comes out, for example, we'll announce the data. We'll announce any revisions. We'll tell you if it's a beat or if it's a miss. Same with earnings that come out on a quarterly basis, or company news, energy news as well. What happens with OPEC, what happens with the EIA figures, inventory data every week, agricultural stuff as well. Just anything that these our guys trade that they want to have a get to.
If I'm a relatively inexperienced retail trader trying to get to grips with technicals and fundamentals, you're not just throwing out, US non-farm payroll number came out and there's 312,000. You're actually educating a little bit as well. That's stronger than expected. So the dollar could be stronger, that kind of thing. Is that what you do?
Yeah, listen, even the most seasoned traders can't get across it all. So to have us there, we get a lot of bank research in, we can digest, and then, as I said, we push out and filter out the noise and give you the personal bits of information that will help, that hopefully will help keep you aware of what's happening and understanding of what's going on around you. But we also have reports and previews and reviews where you can read up on stuff as well. Just not only the audio side. We're there to offer, as I said, just previews and a bit of insight into behind the numbers or behind the event, so people have a better understanding of what's happening. And we have a calendar as well. But you were saying. Yeah,
I think it's a really important service because, I coach traders as well as provide signals and whatever. So my subscribers are often saying to me, why did gold do this? Or why did the dollar do that? And, I'm not in touch at all. I really should be listening to you. So then I'm going through Twitter trying to find out and trying to explain. And, I don't have a grip on the fundamentals the way you do. You clearly, I can't imagine there's many people who understand it better than you because you've been doing it for such a long time. You've watched every single news event. What would a typical day be? How long are you you're running a business now, so I'm guessing you're not squawking all day long yourself, but certainly when you started, what would a typical day be like for you?
Well, pretty sure when I was on my own, I used to start at 6:15 to prep. So I'd be at my desk by 6:15, prepping the coming day. The service would go live about 6:45, when typically the futures markets are opened. We cover any data back then, and I'd be there until typically about 6:30, 7. Because I was on my own, I couldn't cover the US session. As soon as I got enough business in, then I got an assistant in, and we cross over, so they stay to the end of the US session. Now we have a 24-hour desk or a service, so we're there. We start Sunday evening because in Europe, Sunday evening for the Asia start of play, Australian day, and then we finish on a Friday, basically when the US markets close. So, we're there constantly now throughout the week in all time zones to sort of aid traders. So our customer base is global. We have a news feed as well. So if you're away, you can come back and you can search and look for key comments or key protagonists and look at what they've said whilst you've been away. All these sort of things we do now as a service. I've also sat at press conferences for central banks. I used to, attend the ECB, ask questions of Mario Draghi back in the day, or Carney.
Wow, I didn't know you did that.
Yeah. So we had a service a few years back whereby we would report from the central banks. So you go over to Frankfurt for the ECB, and you get the decision. You could then process that, write it up, and then as it was announced, you push that to your clients. Same for the Bank of England. I went over to to Washington for the Fed and used to cover that as well. So So having talked to Carney and when he was Mark Carney, when he was the Bank of England central banker, to see him now as the president of Canada, I've talked to some influential people and asked questions.
What did you learn from flying around the world, going to these central bank meetings, actually speaking to the heads of central banks? That's a hell of an experience.
It is. And I've actually sat in the room that non-farm payroll gets released from. Now, if you go back to when we first started and we were all waiting there at 127, 128, 129, waiting for that non-farm payroll. And then
I remember on the floor because everyone would be stamping their feet, as
exactly.
The anxiety rose, the tension,
yes.
And it would be, and then the buzzer, the number comes out, the floor just erupts. So
it just
from that to now sitting in front of the central banker as that news is released, that's quite a journey for you.
Yeah, and so you see it from one perspective as a broker, as a trader on the floor at the sharp end. And then you go and you talk to these central bankers and you ask them questions which they rarely answer directly. They're very, very skilled at giving you what they want you to know. So you have to read between the lines to understand what they actually really mean. To go from there, and as I said, to be in that room, which is the most unglamorous room in the world, when you think about the amount of money it's made or lost people, and you go in there and it's this little government office with tatty carpets and Formica, tabletops and everything else. It's so anti what you'd expect it to be.
So I didn't actually realise. Sorry to interrupt you. I didn't realise that it was a specific room where these numbers are released. So are there people from the press in there? I thought someone just clicked a button and it was released electronically.
No. So there's you have to go into this room an hour 45 minutes before. They give you they obviously phones at the door, no internet connectivity, no outside world interaction. You get the report as it is for non-farm, for example. You get the chance to look at the number, write it up there, prep the machine, prep yourself, ready for it. And then then they lift the embargo, lift the internet connectivity so that you can connect again, and that's when it's released to the public. Same with central bank events. When you get interest rate decisions, you get into a room. Sometimes they even bring you an economist for Bank of England, for example. An economist would come in, explain some of the reports. It was a monetary policy report, an NPR for Bank of England, for example. They come in and take you through the points that they want you to sort of highlight, really. And as I said, that's when you have to look through what they're trying to say in order to really get at what it is they're not saying, that your audience.
So you're trying to read between the lines of these meetings.
Exactly.
But
you're there for an hour and a half on big events and in this room, looking through the stuff and just going, wow, okay, and trying to condense that down into a readable and digestible piece of information that a nugget that goes out there to your audience. And it's hard work. Journalists it's a tough job at times.
And any memorable, any like particularly memorable events, any piece of data that you could sort of read through the lines, or you pleased with yourself, you've done a good job?
All these trader friends of yours and your clients are all listening to you, and you're sat there and you have the microphone comes to you, and the world of the trading world is looking at you and your question to a central banker. You make sure you've got to get that, make it a pertinent question, because being an ex-trader, an ex-broker, I know what they want to hear from the from the central banker.
Yeah.
Sometimes with journalists, it can be a bit fluffy. They their questions take longer than the answer they get back from the person they're asking. Whereas I think with my background, I was fairly direct, and kept it fairly direct in terms of the questions I asked. And sometimes they give me a decent answer. Sometimes they don't want blunt answers because blunt questions because they don't often give blunt answers. But that was what I'm most proud of, I guess, just being there, knowing that we were down the pecking order. So sometimes all the questions you had, I'd typically go in with 10 questions, and ones everyone would want to ask. And, we're not going to be ahead of the Bloombergs or Reuters. So you tick off that question and that question. Then by the time you get to you're on your 8th or 9th question, you're just going, crumbs, if am I going to ask a sensible question? And there are occasions when you get to your question, you think, oh, great, I've still got a decent question. And the person before you ask that question, you've got nothing. And then your mind's blank. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to ask him now? What do you have for breakfast? So you got to think on your feet. And again, that's the craft from the floor days. Don't panic. Just compose yourself and just go, right, okay, what would my audience, what if I was a trader, what would I be asking him now? And maybe ask it the same question in a different way to one of the other journalists. So I'm proud of all that. I'm proud that from a one-person company, at one point we were, I think, 23, 24 staff, handling 3 or 4 different channels and everything else. So, and I did that. I started that, from literally credit card.
Yeah. Boring credit card. Yeah. I love that. It's a great story.
Yeah. And employing people, As
I said earlier, you've clearly got a hell of a lot of experience. You've watched news come out and you've then watched the market reactions. I would imagine you must have some sort of sixth sense now. For example, and by the time this goes out, the non-farm payroll number on Friday will have already been released. But how would you be viewing that right now? What would you be expecting? How would you be expecting the markets to move? Dollar, the stock markets. When you see a piece of news come out, do you think that's going to push the dollar or that's going to do this?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't think you can see past today. I mean, Liberation Day today is the be all and end all, everything. I think for once, non-farm is the second biggest event in a week. And ultimately, by the time we get to Friday and that non-farm's out, the market may well have played out and it may almost be irrelevant, depending on what's said later today. It may almost be irrelevant because the jobs at the moment, whatever happened, again, that's backward looking. And, this is something that's happening in the here and now in terms of the tariff and the trade war, potential trade war. So that pervades everything. I think so. For once in a month, I don't think non-farms is as important as it normally would be.
Say next month, how would you be preparing for that? How would you listeners?
Well, for the editorials, we look at this stuff way before. So we prepare our preview a few days beforehand. We then get all the bank. We'll do our bank research, go through all the bank research, get all the estimates from the biggest banks, put that into a chart for our audience. They can then have a look at what it is that these different banks are saying, and the range, as important as anything, as the consensus, the median estimate for the data itself, and then we'll push that out the day before and make sure our audience, our customers know what's happening, what's expected. If there's a whisper number, and a whisper number being a number that, back in the day, people used to think, oh no, it's been leaked or something. Someone's got a number out there. It's not. These things are very tightly orchestrated and you don't get leaks. As far as I'm aware, I don't think you've ever had a leak on non-farm. Could be naive, but that's just my, my take on it. But, and so you just prep your team, you get yourself ready for the numbers. You look at the impacts. Generally, by the time the number hits, you've had a lot of the play take place beforehand, and that number is just I get the end product that comes up, and whether it was close to the mark, whether it was way away from the mark, will determine the volatility that you see in the markets thereafter. But for us, that number hits, we announce a number, and we let the traders do their thing. But I'm privileged in this job. I have a job that means it's like windows on the world. I get to see what's happening at any single time, day or night, in the markets, or even beyond the markets, geopolitically, or on a human level. You get all these different stories coming at you all the time, and I couldn't find a more interesting job if I tried.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you're never tempted to go back to trading with all the knowledge that you've built up over the decades?
Tempted? No. You're always, every now and again, you get that little taste of it, and you just think, oh, if I could, I would. And maybe I will once my career in this is over with. But I don't know if I need that level of stress in my life. And listen, if I was any good, I'd have still been doing it. There's horses for courses, I think, and for me, maybe I haven't got the temperament for it. Not everyone has.
Trading never gets easy, I can tell you that.
No.
Okay, so if let's say I've been trading for 6 months, I'm trying to learn. I don't have a very good understanding of the fundamentals, really. What would you say to me on how to progress, how to move forward, how to learn about fundamentals and how they affect markets?
I think very simply, read. There's nothing better than whether it's the FT, whether it's the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, whatever. Just sit down and just take in a little bit every day. Just have a read of the headlines, have a read of this, and then apply it to what it is you are trading. And just have a look. Oh, on this day that happened, and you start off there. Find yourself an experienced trader. Go out there, connect with people. We're in a far more social world now than we've ever been. Back in the day when we started trading, it was a more lonely event. I mean, I traded as a prop trader with people around me, and we had the tools. But if you're sat in your room trading, talk to people, reach out, and talk to more than one person, because everyone's got an opinion. So understand. Firstly, find your own information out. So again, as I said, read the newspapers. And just, if you don't understand it all, take a little bit and then find an answer for it. Find out what that means. Some of the best economists, some of the worst traders. So it doesn't necessarily equate that because you know economics, you're a great trader. They're two completely separate skill sets, both valid, but completely different. But understanding what it is that's moving the markets, potentially moving the markets, or could potentially move the markets, is never a bad thing. Knowledge is never a bad thing. Is how you apply that knowledge is the issue.
And do you think social media is a positive for traders? Should they be monitoring social media channels, or can it just get too confusing?
It can get. I mean, that's why we're here. We filter the news out so you don't have to. But in terms of the noise, there is a lot of noise out there. I think it's something for the good. I think democratizing the news and the Bloomberg and Reuters will don't know me for this, but it's prohibitive for many, many traders to trade, and I find that, and so they're getting run over by the money. And again, it comes down to how much money you have and the resources you have, and the banks will run over the small guy every single time because they don't have the resources. And so you've got to learn to be nimble. You've got to learn to understand what it is that the big boys are looking at. Don't trade the way the big boys do, because you can't, and girls, you can't. It's not the same. It's not the same dynamics. They're not triggered by the same events that you are, and in the same time frame as you are. So, but understanding when things change, when there's a sea change, is always, and that's awareness. That's understanding price action. But it's also understanding fundamentals and understanding the news and understanding what the piece of data means to the market overall on the whole. So it's, again, as I said, I just think you have to arm yourself with as much as you can, and sometimes it gets in the way, and you've got to understand the way you trade and the way you see things. Because listen, I'm not particularly, I said I was never an academic, and it didn't show in my results at school, but I have an understanding. I can look at and read a piece now and understand a lot better. But you start throwing loads of economics at me and all this sort of stuff, it goes over my head too. It's not that easy for me to take in. I'm a visual person, so I'd rather see stuff than read stuff necessarily, hear stuff as opposed to just reading reams and reams of stuff. Find what works for you, and I think that it's really important that you don't try and force yourself down one avenue that you're not comfortable with, because this job involves discipline. As a trader, it involves just knowing yourself, and by knowing yourself, you'll learn the right way. It's hard to explain, but as I said, for me, I couldn't be an economist. That wasn't my gift, but I do know what a headline means. I do know when a market moving comment comes out, and why my listeners need to know it.
Last question. You said when you earlier in the interview that when you first set up First Call, you were in a one of the prop firm.
Yeah.
You went in, and you were there, not with your finger on the pulse on the news, and high pressure because you've got your traders are there in front of you and they're shouting out, Harry, what's going on? Why has this done that? Why is this? You must have learned quite a lot from being in that environment with traders shouting at you and know exactly what traders wanted to hear. Did you learn anything from that, from what traders really need and what they want and how they react?
Yeah, it changes every day. No, but what do they want? They just want to. They want to know the headline in its simplest form. Don't give me all this preamble. What is it? One of the things we used to do is if we know non-farm is coming out at 1:30, I'm not going to say at 1:30, and the non-farm number, it's like the first thing out of my mouth when that clock strikes 1:30 is up 130,000, down 200,000. That's it. That's the first thing you come out. So the traders want that instancy. They need that instancy. They're up against algos. They're up against bigger players. They need some kind of edge. So traders want an edge. When I was getting shouted at, they will come at me and say, look, the DAX has just moved for this, that, and this other reason. Sometimes the DAX moves because there is a paper, what we call paper, a big bank or whatever, that has to offload a load of shares. Sometimes that's what it is. It isn't a fundamental reason. It's a position, and it has to and position. And I know this as a broker that I had orders sometimes. And I remember I did an order in the bunds once, and I moved the bunds about 1.5 on my own. My client did, and the power. I was power hungry after that. It made my name. That's what made my name. That's what everyone stood up and saw Harry, because I handled this order, and it was a huge order in the bunds.
How many futures did you sell?
No, I bought. I was buying, and I think, and back it was relative, but I think I bought back 15,000 bunds. In a day, and this was back in the day when 500 to 1,000 would move the bunds. So it was, and this order came in, and it was in bits and pieces, and they just keep buying it more. Yeah, buy me another 2,000, another 3,000. Right, total's 10,000. Right, total's 12,000, and it was just, and I was buying this thing, and it was honestly, it was fun. It was one of those sort of days that I will never ever forget. In all the years of working over in Chicago was an eye-opener, just seeing the vastness and the scale. We thought London and the financial futures in London were big. Then you go to the home of futures and you work in Chicago. You work on the Eurodollar floor, which was the size of a football pitch, full of about 5,000 to 10,000 people, I think, at any one time.
Just the Eurodollars.
Yeah. It was immense. It was immense.
So that was probably the size of the live trading floor was just the Eurodollar bit.
Yeah. You couldn't be heard down the other end. You had to have two booths, one for the front and one for the backs in terms of.
Oh, really? That's crazy.
It was just immense.
So you could be trading the Eurodollar pit and not know 50% of the people that are in the pit.
No. I mean, it was, and it's just a different. It's the cultural thing as well. Going over there, we used to wear shirt and ties and all this sort of stuff. Over there, they used to wear golf shirts, and because they generally were going off to play golf when the floor shut, a token tie just to, to show they were wearing a tie, and they wear chinos and stuff. Whereas I've seen the features. Yeah, but it was just the fun I had, the people I met, and it's one of those sort of industries. We're fortunate that we meet people from all over the world, and that can only be a good thing.
You must have a hell of a black book with the contacts that you've made over the years. Right, this is genuinely the last question because I think we have to wrap it up. But are your LiveSquawk customers, are they all retail traders, or do you have some companies and the bigger players out there?
Our client base ranges from tier one banks through to retail. So again, they want different things from us, and so we cater in different ways to the service. But ultimately, we are there as an audio news service that alerts you to what's happening at any one time. But yeah, our client base is broad. We have a number of products. We've got the macro product, which covers everything and gives you all the asset classes as well as the data and the calendar and the reports. But we can filter it down. You can filter it down if you're a retail and can't afford that level of service to just the audio, and you can then just listen, have it on in the background. As I said, we're not a radio station, so you won't hear us all the time. There'll be lots of dead air, but you'll know when we speak because it matters.
Well, I know it's a terrific service, and I do highly recommend it, especially if you're, some of my subscribers who pushed me to teach them about fundamentals. I think you're the man to teach them. How do people find you? How do people find LiveSquawk?
Oh, LiveSquawk.com, LiveSquawk.com, because you don't know how many people can spell squawk wrong. So you can find us online. We're on LinkedIn. We're on X, Blue Sky. You can find us at Facebook, all those channels. And come and have a trial. We do free trials for customers. And we got different levels of service. We got an FX channel as well as the macro channel. We have several other channels, Trading Floor Audio, which is a different service delivered in a slightly different way by a veteran of 30 odd years, Paul Johnson, or Batesy as he's known. And so there's a service for everyone and a price for everyone. So try us out and just see if it's something that can help your trading day.
I thoroughly recommend it. Well, Harry, always good to chat to you. I think I owe you beers. I think you paid for them last time. So hopefully I'll be able to catch up with you when I'm in London next.
That sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Okay, that's it for this episode of the Trading Battle podcast. Huge thanks to Harry Daniels for sharing his incredible journey and insights from spotting the gaps in the market, intel to building a news service trusted by traders across the world. Harry reminded us that sometimes the edge isn't in the trade itself, but in the timing and clarity of the information that drives it. If you want to avoid getting blindsided by breaking news, check out LiveSquawk and follow @LiveSquawk on X. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, share the episode, and leave a review if you found it valuable. We'll catch you in the next one.